It could be the longest closure of the U.S. government in history. Is Donald Trump willing to go for broke over a border wall with Mexico? I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmaker is the U.S. government shutdown. The U.S. president says his government could stay closed for months, even years. It's an explosive threat, given that the longest closure on record lasted 21 days. And that's on track to be beaten this weekend. 800,000 government workers have been furloughed, while thousands of others, from the Secret Service to airport security, are showing up to work without pay. Meanwhile, the economy is taking a hit. Some businesses can't file the government paperwork to operate, while farmers can't get permission for badly needed subsidies. And while Trump is facing criticism for how the shutdown affects people's pocketbooks, others say this whole ordeal has nothing to do with a border wall. Instead, they argue it's meant to distract from the Mueller investigation into the White House's alleged collusion with Russia. Randolph Nogel reports.
No, we're looking at a national emergency because we have a national emergency. Just read the papers. We have a crisis at the border of drugs, of human beings being trafficked all over the world. They're coming through. And we have an absolute crisis, and of criminals and gang members coming through. It is national security. It's a national emergency.
Donald Trump's border wall has so far been erected only in rhetoric. Unable to corral Congress, which until last week was solely controlled by his Republican Party, he's now taking his case directly to the American people. But beleaguered by a special counsel investigation into his administration and a government shutdown, Trump may be running out of time to make good on his #1 campaign promise. Recent polling suggests fewer Americans want the wall than those who do. And while Trump has long said Mexico would pay for it, it seems now Americans will foot the bill, including the $5.7 billion needed to get the project off the ground. Now more than ever, the building of the border wall may hinge on U.S. political will. Something that's been undercut by stories of migrants, both those who've survived the journey north and those who haven't.
I heard you say one death is too many. I'm not asking how many you were responsible for. I'm asking you to promise that there won't be another death under your watch.
You have my commitment to ensure that all of our detention centers take good care of those in our care.
Last month, reports of 2 Guatemalan children who died after being taken into custody by U.S. Border Control further tainted Trump's zero-tolerance border policy.
Barbed wire used properly can be a beautiful sight.
Trump dealt with the news just as he had dealt with public blowback earlier in the year. In reaction to migrant families being separated at the border, blamed the Democrats. But he also blamed the parents in a tweet saying, "The children in question were very sick before they were given over to Border Patrol, and that the father of a young girl who died hadn't given her water in days," adding the Border Patrol needs the wall and that such incidents will end. But Trump's account of what happened doesn't agree with that of the girl's father, who had his statement read aloud by the director of the shelter where he was staying.
Jacqueline's father took care of Jacqueline, made sure she was fed and had sufficient water. She and her father sought asylum from Border Patrol as soon as they crossed the border. She had not suffered from a lack of water or food prior to approaching the border.
And while a political battle rages on in the U.S., in Guatemala, where the 2 children came from, there's only mourning and the flicker of 2 young lives cut short. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me on the program from Scottsdale, Arizona, is attorney and social justice activist Deidre Aboud. And in Washington, D.C., is a legal advisor at the Hispanic Leadership Council, Jeffrey Killian-Palza. I thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Jeffrey, let me start with you. Is the president playing a game of chicken with people's lives, especially little children, the economy, and the safety of the United States over this wall issue?
No, I don't think so. President Trump has been very clear since day one that we need a strong border security. The issue is quite simple: build the wall. And that is why President Trump is requesting the money, the funding from Congress. And it's not a lot of money from the U.S. economy. It's just 5.7 billion. Just to give you an example, Congress is allocating $1.8 billion to the United Nations just to pay the bureaucracy that the people of the United States is supporting there.
Right.
So if you compare 1.7
But Jeffrey,
to
if there's such an emergency,
1.8.
certainly, okay, got it. Jeffrey, if there's such an emergency for national security, for border security, why is the president willing to not pay TSA agents, the very people who are in charge of security at airports? The United States faced its most horrific terror attacks via airplanes. So it's okay to not pay TSA agents while he pushes through the border agenda. It doesn't sound like he's very serious about border security, does it?
Those are two different issues. If you are referring to the government shutdown, that has been created for a political game. It doesn't have anything to do with the policy of securing the border that President Trump has been pushing from day one.
I'm putting it to you very simply. There's a cause and effect here. There's a government shutdown as a result of the border issue, and the president is pushing back very strongly against the Democrats, saying, I want my wall or else because of border security, and therefore I'm going to shut down the government. And as the government is shut down, TSA agents are not being paid.
It is not only President Trump. If you have had the time to read a recent poll by Harvard University, almost 80% of the American people, 80% of the American voters agree on building the wall. 80%. Among those 80%, at least 69% of Democrats agree on building the wall. So just see the facts.
Okay,
just
let's
see
bring
the
in
numbers.
Deirdre Abboud. Okay, let's bring in somebody who disagrees.
Not.
Deirdre?
80% of the people want our borders to be secure. That does not mean 80% want a useless wall. Compromise is what the government needs to do. This shutdown is about a temper tantrum. The government wants a wall, not to compromise on actually
What is your proposal?
security.
You don't want the wall. What is your proposal? What is your proposal?
We
What is you don't
we
you
live
don't
in
want
the
the wall.
21st century. We
Democrats
have
do not want.
Okay, so-
Democrats
Okay,
are
Jeffrey.
encouraging people to come here illegally.
Okay,
What
so
is
Jeffrey,
your
you've asked her
proposal?
what's her proposal.
What do
Deirdre,
you
what's your
want?
proposal?
What Democrats say?
Democrats want technology.
What is your
We live in
proposal?
the
You don't want the
Okay,
wall.
Jeffrey,
so Democrats don't.
Jeffrey, you've asked the question 7
We have
times.
to
Allow her to answer it. Go ahead, Deirdre.
We have technology in the
Well,
21st
we need an
century that's
answer.
much better than a wall. We have said several times that there are drones, there are underground sensors. This is not new technology. This is actually taking care of who is crossing the border. This is so much more effective than a wall. Tunnels and shipping ports and airlines are
That is
actually
not
where people
true.
come
That
in
is not true.
undocumented and drugged. It is absolutely true.
The
in every single
officers on
document
border
except for
security
the
are asking
redacted
for the
document.
wall.
Deirdre, I want to ask you something specific related to the 2 dead kids. We have 2 Guatemalan kids, 2 tragedies, a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old. Both of them dying while
Just a second.
Hold on for a second. Let me ask the question, right? I'm going to start with you, Jeffrey, and then go to Deirdre, right?
So my
we have these 2
question-
kids. Hold on for a second,
okay.
Jeffrey. Allow
All
me to
right.
ask the question. So we have these 2 kids who have died. Both of them passed medical screenings initially, so they were fine. And in federal custody, they died. The president is blaming the Democrats. Even though you're for the wall, you would accept that the president is making stuff up now. They were in the responsibility and the care of the United States, and they died. That's wrong, isn't it, Jeffrey?
The children are responsible are parents responsible. Just see what happened. Those kids have been drawn for how many for 3,000 or 4,000 miles or kilometers. They have been traveling for 3 or 4 weeks without water, without shelter, without proper alimentation. So the consequences are.
But Jeffrey, if the initial health test said the kid was not dehydrated, and then they go in custody and then they are dehydrated, who's responsible for the dehydration? It's not the parents.
The children and his parent and his father were trying to cross the border through a desert area.
Jeffrey, if you have somebody in your prison and that prison dies, aren't you responsible for that person's death?
It is not a prison, it's a detention center. It's not a prison, it's a detention center.
If you have somebody in your care, if the person was healthy before they came into your care and now they're in your care and they die as a child, isn't it your fault?
The child was taken to the hospital. The doctors provide medicine, and then it was under observation for 90 minutes, and the doctors decide to send this child back to the detention center. It's not a jail. It's not a jail. It's a detention center. And then, unfortunately, this happened. My condolences to the Gomez family for what happened. This is a tragedy.
Okay, Deidre Aboud. The president says, hold on, Jeffrey.
This is a very dangerous journey.
Deidre, the president says this is the Democrats' fault because they're not agreeing to play ball with the wall. If there was a wall, these kids wouldn't be dead. Please address that, Deidre.
You can't give condolences for the parents for the death of their child and at the same time blame them for the death of their child. They did not die in the desert. These two first graders died in U.S. custody.
So
U.S. government
I can't say my condolences to the family. That's ridiculous.
At the same time that you blame them, no. They did not die in the desert. These first graders were in U.S. custody under the responsibility of U.S. government. The U.S. government cannot abdicate its responsibility for the care of first graders. This administration said that it will be better than the previous administration. First graders dying in custody is not better by any metric.
Let me ask you a question. Are you against or are you encouraging people to enter illegally to the United States of America?
We are not encouraging people to cross the border undocumented, but when people ask for asylum, which is a legal remedy open to people, and the U.S. government decide to put them in a detention center, then they are responsible for their welfare. The U.S. government cannot abdicate its responsibility for the death of two first graders in its care.
Deidre, I want to sort of look strategically at this issue and ask whether the Democrats should maybe cave for now and maybe live to fight another battle and another day. It's $5 billion or just over $5 billion. The government shutdown is hurting the economy. It's hurting national security. We've even heard of teenagers dying in national parks, for example, because park rangers might not have been there to protect them and so on. Food stamps could be next. Is it worth the battle, or should Democrats maybe push this through?
It is worth the battle not to have a monument of hate, which is the wall, and instead that $5 billion could go for technology that would actually do something other than just be a monument. Or we could put it for Medicare for all, so that maybe the rest of us don't die from lack of health care.
Jeffrey, if it can be proven to you that you don't actually need a wall, but that you could find creative ways to have a secure border without building this mega structure, would you accept that?
In the areas where we have the wall already, that is San Diego, California, El Paso, and some other areas, illegal crossing has dropped by 90%. 90%. So it shows that the wall works. So just to put you an example, my house have a wall, and the wall in my house is to protect myself. So a wall will protect the country. A wall will deter illegal crossing in the border, in the southern border of the United States. It's very simple. What the Democratic Party is doing is playing a political game in order to attack President Trump. That is very, very clear, and the American people knows about it. That is why 80% of the voters, as I mentioned before, according to the Harvard poll,
I'm going to look into this Harvard poll, and I would also advise the viewers to look into this. We're going to fact check this, and on social media we're going to check if this actually checks out. Deidre, are the Democrats playing a game here?
Absolutely not, actually. Trump said that he would proudly shut down the government in order to get his wall. And also, the U.S. Senate is refusing to allow any votes that would be vetoed. So the U.S. Senate can't even do the 2/3 override, where you can override a president's veto if you have enough votes. So sounds to me like the Republicans are playing the game. And remember that the Republicans had control of all three branches of government for 2 years. Why is the emergency now and not the last 2 years? And why can't we compromise? Because compromise is actually what government's supposed to do. And you cannot build a wall in the Native American lands. You can't build it on water, and you can't build it on mountains. So we're going to have technology anyway.
Jeffrey, the president can actually, as commander-in-chief, declare a national emergency and circumvent Congress and build the wall anyway. At what point would you support him doing that?
In the next few weeks, I think, because I don't see the Democratic Party to compromise with national security. The wall has to be built as part of the national security. We have a serious problem in the southern border. 90% of heroin entered through the southern border. The southern border is controlled, and the side of Mexico is controlled by the mafias. There is a human trafficking.
But Jeffrey, you would support the president completely avoiding Congress. Certainly, you would support the president completely avoiding and circumventing Congress and essentially going full dictator on this issue.
Yes, I will. I will.
Okay, that's fascinating.
If this will solve the issue, I will. I will support President Trump. President Trump has been very clear. We need to secure our border. The Democratic Party doesn't want that.
Okay.
That is very clear.
That's fascinating. Didra Aboud, the president's going to give a prime-time address. What do you expect to hear from him? What do you want to hear from him?
Well, I sure hope that I don't hear that it's a national emergency, because using the word emergency and terrorist just all over the place makes those two words not have the significance that they need to have. What the president needs to do is show leadership, working with both parties, because that's what the United States government is expected to do, and that's why we pay them. We don't pay them to shut down the government and not do their job.
Jeffrey, very finally, come in.
Yes. President Trump has been showing a strong leadership. All the proposals that President Trump delivered to the American people has been reached already. We have a growth in the economy. We have almost zero unemployment. Minorities are doing very, very well. And now the final step is to secure our borders, and President Trump will deliver.
Okay, very finally, on the issue of government shutdown, you'd be interested to hear from the Airline Pilots Association, representing more than 60,000 pilots worldwide. They wrote a letter to President Trump, pleading with him to end the shutdown, which they say is adversely affecting the safety, security, and efficiency of our national airspace system. Going to be interesting to see what they do. We'll keep a close eye on Washington and what President Trump says. For the moment, let me thank you both, Didra Aboud and Jeffrey Kehian Palsa. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers. Coming up on the program, is India's proposed ban on triple talaq divorce aimed at jailing deadbeat husbands, or a political attack on Muslims? And Cambodia's Prime Minister oversees celebrations marking 40 years since the end of the Khmer Rouge. But has Hun Sen brought back authoritarianism? Some Muslim men believe repeating the word talaq 3 times grants them instant divorce. And many have used it to leave their wives effortlessly and without repercussions. The practice is controversial, with some claiming it goes against gender equality, human rights, and even Islam itself. Now, India's ruling party, the BJP, wants it banned. But many in the opposition say this is not a case of helping women, but rather a political attack against Muslims ahead of elections. We'll debate what's at stake in a moment, but first, here's Sandra Gatman.
Talaq Talaq, talaq. The 3 words a Muslim man must pronounce to formally end his marriage. It's a tradition that's often misinterpreted and misused. Many Muslim countries have banned so-called triple talaq as a form of instant divorce. But in India, hundreds of Muslim women have come forward with cases of husbands abandoning their homes and their children after proclaiming triple talaq in letters, emails, even in WhatsApp messages. Last year, India's top court weighed in. A panel of 5 judges representing the country's major faiths ruled that what is sinful under religion cannot be valid under law and declared talaq, or instant divorce, unconstitutional.
Triple talaq is not an essential part of Islam and therefore it enjoys no protection in Article 25, and direct the government of India to legislate a proper statute within 6 months to reconsider this, because all countries, including theocratic and Muslim countries, have done so.
It is historical not just for the Muslim women, but for the entire women population of India in particular. And it is a historical ruling looking at the fact that it took 70 years.
India's government now wants to go further and make talaq divorce a criminal offense. A bill being put to lawmakers proposes a 3-year jail sentence and a fine for perpetrators. Supporters say harsher consequences are needed because the practice has persisted despite the Supreme Court ruling. But critics say any form of punishment goes too far.
Women didn't oppose the ban on triple talaq when the court verdict came out, but we are against the bill proposing jail time.
Opponents of the talaq divorce bill say it allows police to make arbitrary arrests. There's also concern that it only targets Muslim men.
A Hindu man, a Hindu husband, for abandoning the wife, can he be declared a criminal? Can he be sent to 3 years in jail?
The issue has become political. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling BJP party has repeatedly tried pushing the bill through parliament, despite huge resistance from opposition parties.
That your dream of having more Muslims in jail will be realized. This is what you're doing.
They blame the government for using the talaq bill to fuel anti-Muslim sentiment and score points among the BJP's Hindu nationalist support base ahead of elections next year. Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers.
To discuss this, we're joined in New Delhi by a spokesman for the ruling BJP, Sudesh Verma. In Mumbai, we have Waris Pathan. He's the spokesman for the opposition party, All India Majlis-e-Ittihadul Muslimin. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Let's start with the man from the BJP, Sudesh. So, criminalizing triple talaq. Tell me why you think it's the right thing to do.
You are aware that the Supreme Court of India, which is the custodian of the Constitution of the India and all the values enshrined in the Constitution, had termed instant triple talaq. We are not talking of triple talaq per se, but we are talking about talaq-e-biddat, which is instant triple talaq, which is said on WhatsApp, which is said on phone, which is sent through messages, and then this talaq provision is used to divorce Muslim women by their husbands. So this has been termed illegal and unconstitutional by the Supreme Court India. We took about a year to get a law framed, and during this time also, when it was illegal, people used this triple talaq to do the divorce. So we realized that, unless because Supreme Court had asked us to frame a law, unless you criminalize it, because something which is illegal should not be used. That is why it is illegal. That is why it is unconstitutional. So if you do that, then naturally you fall within the realm of criminality. And
Right.
that too, even when we made it criminal, we have made it very sensitive in the sense that there is a provision for bail by magistrate, there is a provision for the wife going, and the crime can be compounded. So all these things have made the legislation very, very sensitive towards both the sides. At the same time, we felt there's a need for have a justice system which criminalizes the whole process which is illegal.
Okay, let me bring in Waris Pathan here. So, Waris, one of the interesting things that we heard there was that he spoke, Sudesh, about talaq-e-biddat, as he said, which obviously comes from the word bid'ah, or innovation, right? So they categorize or subcategorize this. They say, well, talaq per se, and a lot of Muslims do believe this, is a three-pronged phase if you like, maybe over a period of time, 3 legal processes, but it's those who do a 3 strikes and you're out type of thing, whether on WhatsApp or to their wife's face, it's that is wrong, and they want to criminalize that. Why are you against that? Tell me.
Well, let me tell you, marriage in Islam itself is a civil contract. Now, in a civil contract, the government of the day, that is the BJP, is trying to criminalize it. When the Honorable Supreme Court has in clear terms said that whosoever pronounces instant triple talaq, that is null and void. If it is null and void, that means that the marriage itself is not dissolved. The wife remains the wife, the husband is the husband. Now they want to criminalize it by sending the man to jail for 3 years. The onus lies on the wife to prove that she was instantly given triple talaq. Okay, we say Supreme Court is right, we accept the law. Now you tell me, I am asking a simple question. During the pendency of that period, if the husband is sent to jail for 3 years, she remains the wife. Who will take care of the wife and the children? Who will burn the burden to engage lawyers to see that the man, the husband is sentenced to jail, comes out on bail? Now, after coming out on bail or after being acquitted after 3 years, will that man accept his wife? That is why we say that this bill with the law which the BJP government is trying to bring itself per se bad enough. Now, the government is talking about gender justice. Article 14 talks about right to equality. If a Hindu divorces, the punishment is not that. So why only for the Muslims?
Okay, so
and
let me,
what
before
about
I
the
ask,
desertion law?
Okay, so
many people
okay, so
have...
you posed a bunch of interesting questions there, right? So you posed a bunch of them. Before I go to Sudesh to address why it might be different or the law might be different for Hindus, I want to ask you, Waris, you're saying that if people come from poorer communities and if the husband is in jail, who's going to provide for the wife and kids? Well, he was divorcing the wife anyway, right? So he was divorcing her anyway instantly. So wasn't he going to give her some sort of payoff and that was going to be that?
Well, see, this is nothing but the government wants to interfere into the Sharia law which we are practicing. This is the interference in the law. Let me tell you, instant triple talaq, talaq-e-bidda, which they call, is bad in law, and the Supreme Court also held we have to accept the Supreme Court ruling. But I am talking about the hypocrisy of the government of the day. Here, the spokesperson of the BJP, Mr. Verma, said that we have to follow the Supreme Court, which is the guardian of the Constitution. Now, in triple talaq law, it becomes the guardian. And what about the Sabarimala, where the Supreme Court says that the woman should not enter into the temple between this age? There the Supreme Court, there the BJP people say, no, it is the question of our faith. So what about my faith? Your faith is faith and my faith is not faith.
Okay,
that
so
is what they want to say.
So
this is the hypocrisy.
Let us pose that to
This
Sudesh.
is no justice to the Indian woman, let me tell you.
Okay, so let's pose that then to Sudesh. Sudesh.
This is no justice to the Indian woman. This is creating more burden for the woman.
Okay, so this is not a liberation for Muslim women, because what happens to the Hindu women who want to enter temples? They're told, well, the government's on side with arguably misogynistic practices. Go ahead and answer.
No, it is not correct. You see, actually, if you want to have a debate on that, we can have a separate debate on that. But you must know that if a Hindu wants to divorce his wife, he has to follow a legal process, and then he has to pay compensation to his wife also. Because the divorce is through court only, there is no provision for instant triple talaq or whatever, and it's equal. Men can divorce and also women can divorce. Tell me, which women in Islam would get the right to divorce husband through triple talaq? And it is not Sharia, it is against Sharia. The court has said it is against Sharia. Sharia Act of 1937 does not provide for talaq-e-biddat. We are not against talaq per se, I told you in the beginning. Is the triple talaq, instant triple talaq, which the government is opposing because it violates the right to equality of Muslim women. Muslim women cannot be allowed to live a life of destitute just because men want to just feel that the woman is no longer desirable, so she can be given triple talaq. Now there is provision for subsistence.
So
and you cannot say that if you have committed an act of criminality, you cannot say that because your family will suffer, you should not be punished. You have committed an act which is criminal.
Okay,
so
Sudesh,
you will suffer the punishment.
Okay, Sudesh. So, Waris, help me understand why you don't trust the intentions of those parliamentarians trying to push this through.
Well, it is clear from the way the BJP government is trying to implement criminalize it, this is nothing but putting the burden on the wife to prove. Now, as the BJP spokesperson was talking about equality, what equality you are talking about? Is it gender justice? In one case you want to show equality, the other you don't want. Is it not hypocrisy? And let me tell you, let me bring to the notice of the viewers who are watching all over the world, that lakhs of Muslim women came out on road opposing the Triple Talaq bill. Why is the BJP spokesperson silent on that? Were they mad? Those women said that this bill is directly in confrontation with our Sharia law. And how many percentage of Triple Talaq have taken place in our country? And see comparatively how many women have been deserted. Sir, let me tell you, there are 20 lakh plus Hindu sisters who are waiting in Vrindavan for getting justice. Who will give them justice? Where is the law of desertion then? That is why we say the Modi government is only against the Muslim women. They don't want to empower Muslim women. Let me tell you, let me make it very, very clear. Their intentions are bad. They don't want to empower. Had they any intention of empowering the Muslim women, time and again we have been requesting that, okay, kindly give the Muslim women demand-driven scholarship. What prevents them, the government, from providing that? Let the Muslims get education. Okay. Let them come forward in society.
Sudesh.
Let them come
Okay,
forward
let's
in
get
life.
Sudesh
But
to
no,
respond.
here the intention of the government is malicious.
Okay,
And that is why we
malicious
object to
intent.
it.
Sudesh?
You say it's wrong to say so. I'll tell you why. For the simple reason that you go and ask a Muslim women who has suffered. Muslim women have been coming on the television channels, debating it openly. It's not, ours is not a closed society. You must understand there is a difference between India and there is a difference between other countries which are Islamic countries. We are not governed by Sharia. We are governed by the Constitution of India. Private laws that come in conflict with Article 14 that guarantees equality to everyone, irrespective of sex or caste or religion, will always prevail. You see, even in Turkey, I understand, even in other Islamic countries, the provision of triple talaq and instant go, talaq-e-biddat does not exist. They have witnessed reforms. So why should Muslims of India, particularly males, try to protect that domain that exploits women? That is as simple as that.
Turkey is a secular
like
country.
Quoting say that if something is wrong happening in Hindu society, women can always
Well, I am living in India.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Waris.
Well, sir, may I come in?
Yeah.
Well, I am living in India. I follow the constitution. I don't talk about Saudi and Turkey. In Saudi, the rule of law is that if you commit theft or robbery, your hands are chopped off. This law is not applicable in our country. So if you are living in India, follow the rule, follow the law, follow the constitution, and there should be equality. There should not be a different law for a Hindu divorce. There should not be a different law for a Muslim divorce. You are interfering into the Sharia without...
That's
okay,
a
when
very
you introduce the
progressive
bill,
thing. If
did the government have the courtesy to call the stakeholders for or against? No, the stakeholders were not even consulted. Why? Don't you find any Muslim muftis? Did you not find any Muslim scholars to consult prior to the implementation of the bill? You could have very well consulted the stakeholders. But no, the government of the day wanted to show the dictator mind. This is a dictatorship. This was not in a democratic way. That is why we oppose that kind of bill. Why? Don't talk about gender equality, sir. For 377, you decriminalize. Adultery, decriminalize.
Okay, Waris, give the man a chance to respond.
With the triple talaq, criminalize.
Okay, Sudesh.
I don't agree with what he is saying because he is not able to see reason. Patriarchal society, male-dominated society have led to suffering of women, more so in Islamic society in India. We are not doing anything which is
Yes, I can see those women who are staying in Vrindavan.
Talaq-e-biddat is not allowed.
20 lakh Hindu sisters are there in Vrindavan waiting for justice.
Why should
give them justice first?
Just because they want to preserve their domain, they want to keep exploiting their women.
What about you?
Sit silent.
What about you? When will you give justice to those women who are waiting for justice in Vrindavan? Lakhs and lakhs of girls.
Community you belong to, it doesn't matter. We are all governed by the law of the land. If any act, if personal law comes in conflict with the Constitution, the Constitution shall prevail. That is our Bible.
Okay, gentlemen, let's take a breath for a second. Waris,
and I'm very happy to say, Waris Pathanji said...
Okay, hold on for a second, Sudesh. I want to ask Waris a question because Waris brought up the fact that he believes that the stakeholders were not consulted for or against, and I'm assuming he means within the Muslim community, right? So Waris, if the stakeholders could be consulted, right? And we look at this and as a baseline, we accept that, okay, it's probably a really terrible idea if somebody can divorce his wife on WhatsApp, and we move from that baseline. Would you accept some sort of compromise position?
Well, let me answer to your query and to your question. The thing is, if the stakeholders would have been consulted, like if some mufti or Muslim scholar, they would have very well said that the marriage is a civil contract. When the meher is announced, kindly provide a contract in the meher that if you divorce, if you give instant triple talaq, you will have to pay 4 times more than what is there in the meher. Put that punishment. And if the husband, if the man, he does not follow the contract, in that you can imprison him, that you can make him a criminal and you can send him to jail. Because if you don't follow the contract, if you don't accept the contract, then it amounts to a crime. That way you can criminalize. But the government they did not have any courtesy to consult them. They went ahead and they said that, okay, if you pronounce instant triple talaq,
it is wrong.
You will be sent to jail. Whereas the Supreme Court says it is null and void.
Sudesh,
I am saying, what is wrong in that?
Okay, hold on. So Sudesh,
what is wrong?
Sudesh, we're hearing from Waris.
If you enter into a contract with a woman,
okay,
and if you don't follow the contract, it becomes a crime.
Okay, so he's saying it's a civil contract.
But not for pronouncing triple talaq. Because in marriage is there, sir. Marriage itself remains. It is not dissolved.
Please don't confuse the debate with your shouting match. You see, it's wrong to say we did not consult. We consulted.
You talk, you don't
Even
know
when
how
it was being argued before the Supreme Court, All India Muslim Personal Law Board, which claims to be custodian of Muslim interests, also argued. They did not. They said that we will create awareness, but no awareness was created. The practice continued. The government was bound to come up with the legislation, and if you use
how many
something which is
divorces in
un-Islamic,
Hindus have taken place
which
till
is
now?
not there. If
Kindly show the empirical data to the viewers that how many divorces have taken place in Hindu community and how many divorces have taken place in Muslims. Kindly show the data. I will give the data.
If it's a civil contract, you cannot
Kindly
use
show
the
the
criminal
percentage
act
of desertion. Kindly show the
talaq.
percentage of divorces in the Hindu community.
Okay. And
how many triple talaq
no, we don't need to show you.
in the country?
You
Can
say
you tell
whether the
me?
law is
Can you give
progressive
the
or
data?
not.
And I think
Can you
we'll
give
have
the
want to
data?
give justice
Can
to
you
your
give the
women or
data?
not?
Can you give the data?
Gentlemen, and I think we'll have a separate discussion with
You
regards...
don't worry about the women. Kindly
Lakhs
give
of
justice to
Muslim
the
women
lakhs of
came on
women
the
who want
street
justice and
demanding
Vrindavan
an
who
end
are
to
waiting for
instant
justice.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we'll have a
Kindly give them
separate
justice,
discussion
sir.
about Hindu women vis-a-vis Muslim women in India, because I think that's something that's been brought up very often. And full disclosure here, for a lot of viewers, you would be watching this and thinking, where's the Muslim woman in this particular debate, or where's the Indian woman at all in this debate? I will say we reached out to multiple women in our research and the build-up to the segment, and we did actually have a feminist activist who was ready to appear on the show. The Skype connection was terrible, and we apologize for that, because we were going to have a female Indian voice on this debate and this panel. But for the moment, gentlemen, I have to move on. I thank you both for joining us here on The Newsmakers, Sudesh Verma and Waris Pathan. Thanks again.
Thank you.
We celebrate this enormous event in order to remember the impact of Pol Pot's barbaric and genocidal democratic Kampuchea on our motherland, our people and our spirit, and to thank those men and women who have sacrificed their lives in the struggle to fight to overthrow this genocidal regime and prevent them from ever returning to Cambodia.
Thousands of Cambodians have observed victory over the Khmer Rouge Day in Phnom Penh, marking the fall of the dictator Pol Pot 40 years ago. Overseeing the celebrations was Prime Minister Hun Sen, who fought to overthrow the regime. But while some see him as a liberator, others view him as a continuation of strongman politics. Let's take a look at the country's political situation in retrospect. Well, to discuss the state of Cambodian politics today, we have Sochua. She's the vice president of the opposition Cambodia National Rescue Party. She joins us from Morocco's capital, Rabat. Good to have you on the program once again, Sochua. So,
thank you.
There are those who see the government extending a hand and saying, come back to politics as an olive branch. And there are others who see it as a trap. Where do you stand on this?
Well, as you see, at this moment, myself and other colleagues are in exile. The president of this Cambodia National Rescue Party, the only opposition party that has over half of the country behind us, the president, Mr. Kem Sokha, is in jail. Democracy in Cambodia is dead. So that's the political situation in Cambodia. After 40 years of Mr. Hun Sen, after 45 years after the Khmer Rouge, so the democracy is dead in Cambodia.
So do you agree with Sam Rainsy, who says it's a trick when the ruling party says, come back to politics now because we're ready to have you back?
Come back to politics, according to Mr. Hun Sen. He has now a one-party state. The whole country now is in his hands. Over the 125 seats in parliament belong to his party. At the local level, at the same thing, all belongs to Mr. Hun Sen. Come back to what? Under his terms. However, we have the international community speaking to Mr. Hun Sen at the same time. He has to come back under the terms of democracy and human rights.
So those overtures, are they to you or are they to the international community who are putting pressure on him?
Mr. Hun Sen is still manipulating the situation. On one hand, he knows that he cannot afford to have the opposition party back together intact because he will stand to lose the next election. We are calling for re-election. However, he has the pressure of the international community, and we thank the international community for being strong with democracy. But however, the action has been taken now. The longer we wait for Mr. Hun Sen, the better he can manipulate the situation. The Cambodian people cannot wait any longer. There has to be a return to democracy.
Mona Vidya Kem is probably not as cynical as you are, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kem Sokha's daughter. She's looking at this as an opening, and she and Sam Rainsy have very publicly disagreed over this. Both are part of the same movement, your movement. Hun Sen must be loving it, looking at the divisions within your party.
I don't think there is a division. I think it's a matter of when, and we want when Mr. Hun Sen will free Mr. Kem Sokha, the father of Mona Vidya. We want him, our president, to be freed today, now. And we agree that unless Mr. Kem Sokha is free, there is no way we can be talking about democracy. It's not a rosy situation. The facts are that Mr. Kem Sokha is still in jail, and the democracy in Cambodia is still not back on track. So we have to be coming to a point where there is at least a point of negotiation with Mr. Hun Sen.
Right. As far as we understand from the outside looking in, it seems as if the way the government has viewed you as the Cambodia National Rescue Party. Initially, they saw you as a threat. You were charged with treason. Party members and the party itself was dissolved at election time. But now after elections and after international pressure, it's water under the bridge. Come back and we'll sort it out. Tell me why you think that's wrong.
What is wrong is that it's democracy as a whole. It's not just the opposition party that is dissolved. We have to look at civil society. We have to look at the situation of human rights at this moment, at workers' rights, at a whole issue of stability, economic stability. We have to look at the presence, the growing presence of China in Cambodia as well. So the situation is being manipulated by Mr. Hun Sen, and that is saying that democracy is up to one man. That is that is wrong. Democracy is about all of us together, sitting, finding solutions for our nation, for our people.
Okay, but given that he's reached out a little bit and he's showing a bit of a thaw, obviously a cynical interpretation could be that there's no elections for the next few years, so he can seem kinder to the opposition until there are elections, and maybe he can clamp down, right? But if what we're discussing is the reality that the international community is putting pressure on him, don't you think that it would be really unwise for him to, for example, arrest someone like you if you decided to go back home now? He wouldn't do that, would he?
He would. He would, so that he could say that he's still in control. However, he would have to think twice. He would, so that he could continue to threaten and to spread fear among the grassroots supporters. We have said already that we will be going back home to Cambodia, because Cambodia is home to us, and living in exile is not a choice, it's not a solution for Cambodia. We are looking for a solution for Cambodia. We are looking for democracy back on track. And asking Mr. Hun Sen for any favor so that we can go back to politics, I think is wrong.
And as we circle back to the very beginning, when you see and hear Hun Sen up there on the podium commemorating overcoming the dark days of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot, how do you feel about that?
You know, when we look at that, we look at 60,000 people is a mass. Who is bringing the mass to the big stadium? The flags that you see over at the stadium are the flags of the ruling party. Is the celebration of the ruling party, the Cambodia People's Party, that is a part of the Khmer Rouge. Mr. Hun Sen is a former Khmer Rouge, so it's a continuation of the Khmer Rouge, but in a different form.
What's your message to the international community as they watch this? And they might not have, and you must forgive them, might not have all the information about what's going on in Cambodia right now. As somebody in opposition and in exile, what's your message to them about your country?
I am very certain that the international community will continue to stand with democracy, because Cambodia is an important place in geopolitics, and I believe that especially the EU, the European Union, the Commission itself, the Parliament itself of the EU are speaking with one voice. It's just a matter of when will they take action. I think the when should be now. The longer the EU, the international community, leaves room for Mr. Hun Sen to manipulate, the more damage it will make. It will be made to democracy.
And if the government's actually watching this interview on YouTube or elsewhere, what would be an act or a gesture that would make you trust them? Would it be the full release of Kem Sokha, or what?
Not just the full release, immediate release, and drop all the charges against Mr. Kem Sokha, and the return of all of us to go back and not have to ask for permission, petition for pardon. We have not committed any crime, but just what we have done for the past 25 years is to promote democracy, promote human rights, equality, economic justice, social justice for our people. Development is for all of us, for Cambodia to move forward. And the role of the opposition, no matter which party is going to be in opposition, there has to be a parliament that is not a one-party state, a parliament that functions, and institutions, national institutions like the court, the judiciary must be independent, free from the hand of Mr. Hun Sen.
Sochua, great pleasure talking to you on the Newsmakers once again. Thank you very much. That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garta. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Next time, chaos in Gabon. The government says it's foiled a coup But with the president on medical leave and no clear successor, is the Bongo dynasty on the verge of collapse? Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.